Assalamu alaikum. So, if the different parts within the marriage contract, we're looking at the groom, we're looking at the bride, we're looking at the wali, we're looking at the witnesses, they all know each other, and the person that's documenting the marriage contract validates that the person is, let's call it, allowed Islamically to get married to X or Y or whatever, is then the marriage is valid. But I would not recommend such types of marriages, especially if the documentation becomes a problem. Why? Because if the woman is to get married online and then the documentation is a problem in situations where probably the children's paternity or probably the wealth or probably the child support or um, alimony, the nafaqa, the spending, the documentation for immigration or for documenting papers, or in a situation where there's a dispute, not always and not all governments would regard that type of marriage as a legal marriage, and then therefore the woman becomes really a victim, that she's to her, I'm married in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a valid marriage, but how to prove that on ground, how to prove your rights on ground is what becomes a problem. I would always tell the sisters, please don't go for a utopian and thinking that as long as it's valid in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's all I care about. That's not enough to care about, because when things go wrong, إن الله لا يزع بالسلطان ما لا يزع بالقرآن. When things go wrong, what you need is the legal documentation to support you to get you your rights. What Islam says right now is not what is implemented, so be careful with going that route. Getting your rights in place is the main reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had actually regarded the witnesses, regarded all the different documentation for marriage. It's in order to protect your rights. Back then, they didn't use this type of documentation. People had better akhlaq. Right now, documentation is mandatory in order to get things done, processed right, and done right legally, or else the woman, her children will be victims. The man will just walk away. If a divorce happens and he will just, or even if a divorce doesn't happen, just walk away. Nothing can actually run after him, because, yeah, prove that I'm the child, the father of this child. Prove that I have a responsibility. And then she ends up really a victim of her own choices. Assalamu alaikum.